Once upon a time, nestled in a lush green valley, there was a small farm that belonged to a kind-hearted girl named Ella. Ella lived with her parents and her faithful little dog, Max. The farm wasn't large, but it was full of life. There were chickens clucking merrily in their coop, cows grazing peacefully in the meadow, and rows of vegetables growing tall and strong under the warm sun. Ella was a curious and resourceful girl. She had a special bond with nature and all the animals on the farm. From a young age, she had learned to care for them with love and attention. Every morning, she would wake up early, even before the sun had fully risen, to tend to her chores. Max, her fluffy brown dog with a wagging tail, was always by her side, eager to help in any way he could. Max had been with Ella since he was a tiny puppy. He was a bundle of energy, always running around the farm, chasing butterflies, and digging up interesting things from the ground. But Max wasn't just any dog. He was a keen observer and had a way of knowing when something wasn't right. His keen sense of smell and sharp hearing made him the perfect companion for a girl like Ella, who loved to explore and discover new things. One crisp morning, as Ella and Max were out in the garden picking fresh tomatoes, Max suddenly stopped and perked up his ears. His nose twitched as he sniffed the air. Ella noticed and asked, "What is it, Max? Do you smell something?" Max barked softly and began to tug at Ella's dress, leading her towards the edge of the garden. Ella followed, curious to see what had caught Max's attention. They walked through the rows of vegetables, past the blooming flowers, until they reached a small patch of tall grass near the old oak tree. There, hidden in the grass, was a tiny kitten, shivering and alone. Its fur was dirty, and it looked like it hadn't eaten in days. Ella's heart melted at the sight. "Oh, you poor little thing," she whispered as she gently picked up the kitten. Max wagged his tail excitedly, as if to say, "I knew you'd want to help." Ella carried the kitten back to the farmhouse, with Max trotting happily beside her. She cleaned the kitten's fur, gave it a warm bowl of milk, and wrapped it in a soft blanket. The kitten purred contentedly, feeling safe and loved for the first time in a long while. Ella decided to name the kitten Whiskers because of its long, delicate whiskers that twitched every time it took a sip of milk. From that day on, Whiskers became a part of their little farm family. Ella, Max, and Whiskers formed an inseparable trio, always looking out for each other and the animals around them. A few weeks passed, and life on the farm was as lively as ever. The animals were healthy and happy, the crops were thriving, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. But one morning, as Ella was feeding the chickens, she noticed something strange. Large, unfamiliar footprints in the soft earth near the chicken coop. Ella knelt down to inspect the footprints more closely. They were much bigger than Max's paws and didn't belong to any of the farm animals. What could have made these? She wondered aloud. Max, sensing Ella's concern, sniffed the footprints and let out a low growl. Whiskers, who had been napping nearby, woke up and arched her back, her fur standing on end. Ella knew something wasn't right. She decided to follow the footprints to see where they led. With Max and Whiskers by her side, she carefully traced the path of the footprints through the farm. They led her past the barn, around the vegetable garden, and into the thick woods that bordered the farm. The woods were dense and full of shadows, with tall trees that seemed to touch the sky. Ella had always been a little afraid of the woods, but she knew she had to find out what had made those footprints. Holding Max close and with Whiskers perched on her shoulder, she ventured deeper into the forest. As they walked, the footprints became more scattered, as if whatever had made them was moving quickly. The trees began to thin out, and soon they reached a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing was an old, abandoned cabin. The door was slightly ajar, and the windows were dark and dusty. Ella's heart pounded in her chest as she approached the cabin. Max stayed close to her, his ears alert, while Whiskers hopped down from her shoulder and cautiously crept towards the cabin door. Ella took a deep breath and gently pushed the door open. Inside, the cabin was dark and musty. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the floor creaked with every step. But as Ella's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw something that made her gasp. A large pile of stolen eggs, vegetables, and even a few tools from the farm, all stacked in the corner of the room. Who could have done this? Ella whispered, her voice trembling. Max sniffed the air and let out another low growl, while Whiskers hissed softly. Just then, a rustling sound came from the far corner of the cabin. Ella's heart raced as she turned towards the sound. There, emerging from the shadows, was a young boy, no older than Ella herself. His clothes were tattered and dirty, and his eyes were wide with fear. He held up his hands defensively and stammered, "Please, don't be afraid. I'm not here to hurt you." Ella was taken aback. She hadn't expected to find another child in the cabin. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice softening. The boy lowered his hands and sighed. "My name is Jack. I've been living in the woods for the past few weeks. I didn't mean to steal from your farm. I was just so hungry, and I had nowhere else to go." Ella's heart went out to Jack. She knew what it was like to feel alone and scared. "It's okay, Jack," she said gently. "You don't have to steal to survive. You can come back to the farm with me. We'll help you." Jack looked at Ella, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Really? You do that for me?" Ella nodded and smiled. "Of course. No one should have to live alone in the woods. We can find a place for you on the farm, and you can help us take care of the animals." Jack's face lit up with hope. "Thank you, Ella. I promise I'll do whatever I can to help." And so, with Jack now part of their little family, Ella, Max, Whiskers, and their new friend made their way back to the farm. Little did they know that this was just the beginning of a great adventure, one that would teach them all the importance of friendship, trust, and the power of working together. When Ella, Max, Whiskers, and Jack arrived back at the farm, Ella's parents were in the middle of their afternoon chores. They looked up in surprise as Ella introduced Jack and explained his situation. Her parents listened carefully, their faces softening as they heard about Jack's hardships. "We've always believed in helping those in need," Ella's father said kindly. "Jack, you're welcome to stay with us. There's plenty of work to do on the farm, and we could use an extra pair of hands." Jack's eyes welled up with tears of gratitude. "Thank you so much, sir. I promise I'll work hard and do my best to help out." Ella's mother gave Jack a warm smile. "We'll make sure you have everything you need. Now, let's get you cleaned up and find you a place to sleep." Over the next few days, Jack settled into life on the farm. He was a quick learner and eager to help wherever he could. He fed the chickens, milked the cows, and even helped Ella in the vegetable garden. As he worked, he began to regain his strength, and his once somber expression was replaced with a bright smile. Ella and Jack became fast friends, spending their days exploring the farm and learning about the different plants and animals. Ella taught Jack everything she knew about farming, from planting seeds to harvesting crops. In return, Jack shared stories from his life before he had ended up in the woods. He had once lived in a bustling town far away, but when his parents passed away, he had been left with no family and nowhere to go. Ella was determined to make Jack feel at home on the farm. She introduced him to all the animals, and they quickly took a liking to him. Even Whiskers, who was usually shy around strangers, warmed up to Jack and would often curl up in his lap as he rested after a long day's work. Max, of course, was thrilled to have a new friend. He and Jack would run through the fields together, chasing each other and playing games. The bond between the two grew stronger with each passing day, and Max became Jack's constant companion. As the weeks went by, Jack's presence brought new energy to the farm. He and Ella worked together to take care of the animals and crops, and the farm began to flourish like never before. The animals were healthier, the crops grew taller, and the whole farm seemed to hum with life. But as autumn approached, the days grew shorter. and a chill began to settle in the air. Ella knew that winter was coming, and with it, the challenges of keeping the farm running through the cold months. She and Jack would have to work even harder to prepare for the winter, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the leaves turned golden and the air grew crisper, Ella and Jack knew it was time to start preparing the farm for winter. The animals would need warm shelter, the crops would need to be harvested and stored, and the farmhouse would need to be stocked with food and supplies. Ella's parents guided them through the preparations, teaching them the importance of planning ahead. They explained how the cows needed to be moved to the warmer barn, where they would be protected from the cold winds. The chickens, too, would need extra straw in their coop to keep them warm. One of the biggest tasks was harvesting the crops. The fields were full of ripe vegetables, pumpkins, squash, potatoes, and more. Ella and Jack spent hours each day gathering the produce and storing it in the root cellar, where it would stay fresh throughout the winter. They also picked apples from the orchard, which Ella's mother turned into jars of delicious apple preserves. Max and Whiskers helped in their own ways. Max would bark excitedly as he watched Ella and Jack work, occasionally chasing away any curious crows that tried to steal the freshly harvested corn. Whiskers, on the other hand, kept the barn free of mice, ensuring that the grain stayed safe and secure. As they worked, Jack couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. He had come to the farm with nothing, but now he was part of a loving family and a thriving community. He had never imagined he could feel so at home in a place so far from where he had started. One evening, after a long day of work, Ella and Jack sat on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and the farm was bathed in a warm, golden light. "I never thought I'd have a place like this," Jack said softly, his eyes reflecting the colors of the sky. "I feel so lucky to be here." Ella smiled and placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "We're the lucky ones, Jack. You brought so much to this farm, and we're all better for it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the peacefulness of the evening. Max lay at their feet, his tail thumping contentedly, while Whiskers purred softly on Ella's lap. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Ella's father called them inside for dinner. They ate a hearty meal of stew and freshly baked bread, the warmth of the food filling them with a sense of contentment. After dinner, they all gathered by the fireplace, where Ella's father told stories of winters past, some filled with challenges, but all with happy endings. That night, as Jack lay in his bed, he thought about everything he had learned since coming to the farm. He had discovered the value of hard work, the importance of planning ahead, and the joy of being part of a family. Most of all, he had learned that no matter how difficult life could be, there was always hope if you had people who cared about you. As he drifted off to sleep, Jack knew that whatever challenges winter might bring, he would face them with courage and determination, because he wasn't alone anymore. The first snowfall of the season came earlier than expected. Ella and Jack awoke one morning to find the farm blanketed in a thick layer of snow. The trees, fields, and rooftops were all covered in sparkling white, and the world outside their window looked like a winter wonderland. "Wow, it's so beautiful," Ella exclaimed as she pulled on her warmest coat and boots. Max barked excitedly, jumping up and down at the door, eager to get outside and play in the snow. Jack, too, was excited. He had always loved the snow, even during the difficult times. There was something magical about the way it transformed the world, making everything look clean and new. They rushed outside, with Max leading the way, and were greeted by the crisp, cold air and the crunch of snow under their boots. The farm looked completely different under the blanket of snow, but it was just as lively as ever. The cows mooed contentedly from the warmth of the barn, and the chickens clucked softly from their cozy coop. Ella and Jack spent the morning making sure all the animals were well fed and comfortable. They spread extra straw in the barns and coops and made sure the water troughs weren't frozen over. Max and Whiskers followed them around, keeping a watchful eye on everything. Once the chores were done, Ella turned to Jack with a mischievous grin. "How about a snowball fight?" Jack laughed and scooped up a handful of snow. "You're on." They spent the next hour chasing each other around the farm, throwing snowballs and laughing until their sides hurt. Max joined in, barking and jumping around, while Whiskers watched from a safe distance, not too keen on getting snow in her fur. After the snowball fight, Ella and Jack decided to build a snowman. They rolled large snowballs across the ground, piling them on top of each other to create the body and head. Ella found some pebbles for the eyes, while Jack used a carrot for the nose. Max proudly donated one of his old scarves to wrap around the snowman's neck, and they all stood back to admire their creation. "He looks great," Ella said, clapping her hands together. "We should name him. How about Frosty?" Jack suggested. Ella smiled. "Perfect. Welcome to the farm, Frosty." With Frosty standing tall in the yard, Ella and Jack decided to head inside to warm up. They shook the snow off their boots and coats, and were greeted by the comforting warmth of the fireplace. Ella's mother had made hot cocoa, and they all sat together by the fire, sipping the rich, chocolatey drink. As they warmed up, Ella's father began to talk about the importance of taking care of the farm during the winter. He explained how the snow could be both a blessing and a challenge. The snow provided much-needed moisture for the soil, which would help the crops grow in the spring. However, it also meant they needed to be extra vigilant in keeping the animals safe and warm. "Winter can be tough," he said, "but it's also a time for rest and reflection. It's a time to appreciate what we have and to look forward to the new growth that comes with spring." Ella and Jack listened intently, soaking in the wisdom of Ella's father's words. They realized that the farm was more than just a place to work and live. It was a place of learning, growth, and renewal. Every season brought its own challenges and rewards, and they were all part of the cycle of life. As the day turned to evening, the snow continued to fall outside, creating a serene and peaceful atmosphere. Ella and Jack felt a deep sense contentment as they sat by the fire, surrounded by warmth and love. The farm, with all its challenges and rewards, had become a place of refuge and belonging for both of them. The days grew shorter as winter settled in, and the snow continued to blanket the farm. Despite the cold, Ella and Jack found joy in their daily routines. Every morning, they bundled up in their warmest clothes to tend to the animals. The cows were always eager for their morning feed, their warm breath creating little clouds in the chilly air. The chickens, cozy in their coop, clucked happily as Ella scattered feed for them. Max, ever the loyal companion, would dash through the snow, his tail wagging with excitement. Whiskers, on the other hand, preferred to stay inside by the fire, only venturing out for a quick patrol around the barn before returning to her favorite spot by the hearth. One evening, as the snow fell softly outside, Ella's father suggested they gather around the fireplace for a special winter traditionist storytelling night. Ella's mother brought out a basket of popcorn, which they all roasted over the fire, and they settled in for an evening of tales. "Tonight, I'm going to tell you the story of the Winter Guardian," Ella's father announced, his voice deep and warm. Ella and Jack leaned in closer, their eyes wide with anticipation. "Long, long ago," he began, "in a valley not unlike our own, there lived a great and wise guardian. This guardian was no ordinary creature. She was a magnificent snow-white fox, known as Lyra. Lyra was the protector of the valley, watching over the animals and the land, especially during the harsh winter months. Lyra had a special gift. She could control the snow and ice, using her powers to keep the valley safe from danger. When blizzards threatened to bury the valley, she would calm the winds and guide the snow to fall gently, protecting the homes and fields. When food was scarce, she would lead the animals to hidden stores of berries and nuts, ensuring that no creature went hungry. But Lyra's greatest challenge came one winter when a fierce and cruel spirit, known as the Frost King, descended upon the valley. The Frost King was jealous of Lyra's power and wanted to take control of the valley for himself. He unleashed a terrible storm, freezing rivers and covering the valley in ice. The animals were terrified, and the people of the valley feared that their homes would be lost to the cold. Lyra knew she had to stop the Frost King, but she also knew that it would take all of her strength to do so. She called upon the spirits of the forest, the ancient trees, the wise owls, and the sturdy deer to help her in the battle. Together, they fought against the Frost King, using their combined power to push back the storm. The battle raged on for days, but in the end, Lyra's courage and determination won out. The Frost King was defeated, and he fled the valley, never to return. As a final act of kindness, Lyra used her powers to melt the ice and snow that had covered the valley, bringing warmth and life back to the land. The people of the valley were forever grateful to Lyra, and they honored her with a special celebration every winter. They would light candles and tell stories of her bravery, reminding themselves that even in the darkest of times, hope and courage could overcome any challenge. Ella and Jack were captivated by the story. The image of the brave and noble fox, Lyra, stayed with them long after the tale was told. They could almost imagine her watching over their own farm, keeping it safe from the cold winter nights. As they headed to bed that night, Jack turned to Ella. "Do you think there are guardians like Lyra watching over us?" Ella smiled, pulling her blankets up to her chin. "I like to think so. Maybe Max and Whiskers are our little guardians, looking out for us in their own way." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "And maybe we're guardians too, taking care of the farm and each other." With that comforting thought, they drifted off to sleep, their dreams filled with snowy forests and the gentle glow of guardian spirits. As winter continued, the farm settled into a peaceful rhythm. The animals were well cared for, the crops safely stored, and the farmhouse warm and cozy. But as the snow piled higher and higher, something unexpected was about to unfold. One morning, as Ella and Jack were clearing snow from the barn entrance, Max began barking excitedly. His nose was pressed to the ground, sniffing at something hidden beneath the snow. Ella hurried over to see what he had found. "Max, what is it?" she asked, brushing the snow away. To her surprise, she uncovered a small wooden box buried in the snow. It was old and weathered, the wood darkened with age. Jack came over, his eyes widening at the sight of the box. "Where do you think it came from?" "I don't know," Ella replied, her curiosity piqued. "But there's only one way to find out." They carefully lifted the box and brought it inside the farmhouse, where Ella's parents were busy preparing breakfast. When they saw the box, they exchanged curious glances. "Where did you find that?" Ella's mother asked. "Max found it buried in the snow near the barn," Ella explained. "We don't know what's inside." Ella's father examined the box closely. "It's very old. I wonder if it's been here since before the farm was built." With a sense of excitement, Ella slowly lifted the lid of the box. Inside, they found a collection of small, intricately carved wooden animals. There was a fox, a deer, a rabbit, and even a tiny owl, each one beautifully crafted with fine details. Beneath the animals was a piece of parchment, yellowed with age. Ella carefully unrolled the parchment and began to read aloud. "To the guardians of this land, may these carvings remind you of the spirits who watch over the valley. As long as you keep them close, you will always find protection and guidance." The room fell silent as they all absorbed the meaning of the words. It seemed that the box and its contents were a gift from long ago, left by someone who believed in the power of the forest spirits. "These must be from the people who lived here before us," Ella's mother said softly. "They must have believed in the same guardians your father told you about." Ella's father nodded. "And now it seems those guardians have found their way to us." Jack looked at the carved animals in awe. Maybe Lyra and the other spirits are still watching over us, just like in the story. Ella carefully placed the carvings on the mantel above the fireplace, arranging them so they all faced the room, as if they were keeping watch over the farmhouse. The sight of them filled her with a sense of peace and connection to the past. From that day on, the carved animals became a cherished part of the farmhouse. Every evening, as they gathered around the fire, Ella and Jack would glance up at the mantle and feel a sense of comfort, knowing that they were not alone, that the spirits of the land were with them, guiding them through the winter. The days passed quickly, and before long, the winter solstice was upon them. It was the shortest day of the year, and Ella's parents planned a special celebration to mark the occasion. They spent the morning decorating the farmhouse with evergreen branches and candles, filling the air with the fresh scent of pine. That afternoon, as Ella and Jack were finishing their chores, they heard a strange sound coming from the edge of the farm. It was a soft, melodic whistle, unlike anything they had heard before. Max perked up his ears and barked, clearly curious about the source of the sound. "Let's go see what it is," Ella suggested, and they set off towards the sound, with Max leading the way. As they approached the edge of the forest, they saw a figure standing among the trees. It was a girl around their age, with long, flowing hair and a kind, gentle face. She was playing a small wooden flute, the notes floating through the air like a lullaby. When she saw Ella and Jack, she smiled and stopped playing. "Hello," she said in a soft voice. "I'm sorry if I startled you. My name is Lyra." Ella and Jack exchanged surprised glances. "Lyra," Jack repeated, thinking of the story Ella's father had told them. The girl nodded. "Yes, my family has lived in these woods for generations. We've always been close to the land, and we try to help protect it, just like the guardians of the old stories." Ella was intrigued. "Do you know about the Winter Guardian?" Lyra's eyes lit up. "I do. My grandmother used to tell me that story all the time. She said that the guardian spirit, the white fox, still watches over the valley, especially during the winter." Jack couldn't help but smile. "We found something in the snow the other day, an old box with carvings of animals. It had a note about the guardians." Lyra's expression grew serious. "That's a special gift. The carvings are symbols of the forest spirits. They're meant to remind you that you're never alone, even in the hardest times." Ella and Jack felt a deep sense of connection to Lyra, as if they had found a kindred spirit. They invited her back to the farmhouse, where she quickly became friends with Ella's parents as well. They all gathered around the fireplace, and Lyra shared stories of her family's long history in the woods and their close relationship with the land. She spoke of the importance of respecting nature, living in harmony with the seasons, and understanding the balance between giving and taking from the earth. As the evening wore on, Ella's parents served a special solstice feast. They all enjoyed warm bread, roasted vegetables, and a delicious apple pie, all made from the farm's harvest. The room was filled with laughter and the soft glow of candlelight, making it feel as though they were all part of something ancient and sacred. After dinner, they returned to the fireplace, where Lyra played her flute again. The music was enchanting, carrying a sense of peace and belonging. As she played, Ella noticed that even Max and Whiskers seemed unusually calm, as if they too were captivated by the music. When the music ended, Ella's father spoke up. "Lyra, you have brought something special to our home tonight. We are grateful for your presence and the wisdom you've shared with us." Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the flickering light of the fire. "Thank you. I feel that I've found new friends here, and I'm glad to be part of your celebration." Before Lyra left to return to her home in the woods, she gave Ella and Jack a small gift, another carved animal, this time a fox, similar to the one they had found in the box. "This is for you," she said, handing it to them. "May it remind you of the guardians and the special bond we all share with the land." Ella and Jack accepted the gift with gratitude. As they watched Lyra disappear into the snowy woods, they felt a deep sense of connection to the stories of the Winter Guardian and the land they called home. As the winter deepened, the days grew colder and the nights longer. Snow piled high around the farmhouse, and the wind howled through the trees. But inside, Ella, Jack, and their family stayed warm and safe. comforted by the bonds they had formed with each other and with the land. The carved animals on the mantle seemed to take on new significance as the winter stretched on. Each one represented not just the forest spirits, but also the lessons they had learned, courage, resilience, and the importance of caring for the world around them. Ellie and Jack continued to work hard, making sure the animals were well fed and the farmhouse stocked with everything they needed. Max and Whiskers were their constant companions, bringing joy and comfort on even the coldest days. But winter wasn't without its challenges. One particularly harsh snowstorm left the farm buried under several feet of snow, making it difficult to reach the barn and the animals. Ellie and Jack worked tirelessly, shoveling paths through the snow and ensuring that the animals were safe and warm. During the storm, they discovered that the well had frozen over, cutting off their water supply. Without hesitation, Ella's father showed them how to melt snow over the fire, turning it into drinking water. It was hard work, but they managed, learning valuable skills and lessons about perseverance and resourcefulness. Even with these challenges, the farm remained a place of warmth and love. Each evening, they gathered by the fire to share stories, play games, and talk about their dreams for the future. They often thought of Lyra, wondering how she was faring in the woods, and they hoped she was safe and warm in her own home. As winter slowly began to wane, the days grew a little longer, and the sun shone a little brighter. The snow started to melt, revealing patches of earth and the promise of new life. Ellie and Jack could feel the change in the air, subtle shift that signaled the approach of spring. With the melting snow, they began to prepare for the new growing season. They planned out the garden, deciding where to plant each crop, and gathered seeds from the previous year's harvest. Ella's mother taught them how to start seedlings indoors, nurturing them in small pots until they were ready to be planted in the garden. The farm animals, too, seemed to sense the coming of spring. The cows were more energetic, the chickens began laying more eggs, and even Max had a new spring in his step. Whiskers, ever the curious cat, spent more time outside, exploring the newly uncovered ground. One day, as the last of the snow melted away, Ellie and Jack decided to visit the spot where they had first met. Lyra, the forest was quiet and still, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if the whole world was waiting for the burst of life that spring would bring. To their delight, they found Lyra waiting for them at the edge of the woods. She greeted them with a warm smile, her flute tucked into a pouch at her side. "I knew you would come," she said. "The forest is waking up, and soon everything will be green and alive again." Together, they walked through the woods, marveling at the signs of new growth, tiny buds on the trees, the first shoots of grass poking through the earth, and the sounds of birds returning to the forest. Lyra pointed out different plants and herbs, teaching Ella and Jack about their uses and how to identify them. As they walked, Lyra shared more stories from her family's history, tales of the land and the spirits that watched over it. Ella and Jack listened eagerly, soaking in the knowledge and wisdom that Lyra offered. When they returned to the farm, Lyra gave them one final gift, a small pouch of seeds. "These are special," she explained. "They've been passed down through my family for generations. Plant them in your garden, and they will bring you good fortune and a bountiful harvest." Ella and Jack accepted the gift with gratitude, knowing that these seeds were more than just a token. They were a symbol of the connection they had formed with Lyra. As spring finally arrived, the farm burst into life. The garden was a riot of color, with flowers blooming and vegetables growing strong and healthy. The trees in the orchard were heavy with blossoms, promising a good crop of fruit in the coming months. Ellie and Jack worked side by side, planting, weeding, and tending to the crops. The seeds that Lyra had given them sprouted into strong, healthy plants, and it wasn't long before they were harvesting the first fruits of their labor. Max and Whiskers were never far away, watching over the farm with their usual energy and curiosity. The farm animals, too, seemed to thrive in the warm spring weather, their coats glossy and their spirits high. As the days grew warmer, Ellie and Jack often thought back to the long winter they had endured. They realized that, despite the challenges, the winter had brought them closer together and taught them important lessons about resilience, patience, and the value of community. One bright, sunny day, Lyra returned to the farm. She was carrying a basket filled with herbs and flowers from the forest, which she offered as a gift. "These are for you," she said. "They will bring health and happiness to your home." Ellie and Jack welcomed Lyra with open arms, grateful for her friendship and the wisdom she had shared. They knew that she had become an important part of their lives, and they were glad to have her as a friend. That evening, they all gathered around the table for a special meal, made from the fresh produce they had harvested from the garden. As they ate, they talked about their plans for the future and the dreams they had for the farm. Ella's father raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, "and to the friends and family who make this farm the special place it is." They all raised their glasses, smiling at each other with a deep sense of contentment and gratitude. The farm had faced many challenges, but with the love and support of each other, they had come through stronger and more united than ever. As the sun set on the farm, casting a warm golden light over the fields, Ella, Jack, Lyra, and their family knew that they were ready for whatever the future might bring. They had the strength, the knowledge, and the bonds of friendship to face any challenge, and they knew that the land, with its endless cycle of seasons, would always provide for them.